So you want to import a massive CSV file into Excel without crashing Excel. In this video, I'll show you how to import a CSV file with 1.5 million rows, even though Excel has only 1,048,000 rows using Power Query. Coming right up. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, first of all, I'm going to click on Data, then Get Data, then from File, from Text CSV. Then I'm going to choose Big Sales Data, which is the file that's got 1.5 million rows in it. So it's doing its stuff to load right now. And you get this initial dialog box. You can see that Power Query has been quite intelligent. It's guessed that the first row of the data contains the column headers. And it's done this based on sampling the first 200 rows of data. What we're going to do is we're going to click on Transform Data. And the Power Query editor is loading. Now, Power Query has already done two steps for us. If you look here on the right hand side, you can see that we have source, promoted headers and change types. So unlike SQL type of database things, what's happened here is every element gets done step by step. Okay, so if we look at the first step that Power Query applied to the data, you can see the data this is how the data comes in. The first row is region, second row is country, item type, etc. But Power Query identifies that as the source. Then what it's done is it's promoted the headers, and you can see there's a step called promote headers. So if we look at the difference between source, region is in row 1. When we click on promoted headers, you can see region has gone up and has now been identified as a header of the data. And then it's changed some of the data types. Okay. In a subsequent video, I'm going to look into the VBA behind this, or how to rather do this in VBA, and maybe use Power Query to get your initial data types and data sorts and queries, and then use VBA to adjust it. But right now, we're just going to concentrate on doing it without VBA. So it's changed the type. Now, what we want to do is, remember, this data has 1.5 million rows. Excel has only got something like 1,048,000 odd rows available to it. So what we're going to do in this instance is we're going to bring in each of the regions into separate tabs in Excel. You know, we got to do it somehow. We'll do it this way. So if I click the down arrow here, we can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 regions. So I propose that right now what we do is we put each region into its own tab. So I'm going to click the select all to deselect every region, and then I'm just going to select Asia and I'm going to click OK. And so now what's happened is we've selected just Asia. The query, as you can see, is still saying 14 columns and 999 plus rows. So we're going to have more than 1,000 rows here, but given we've divided the data roughly by 7, it's not going to be evenly done by 7. We should very easily come in under the 1,048,000 row limit. So what we do now is close and load, and I'm going to click close and load to. And so when that comes up, you have the option of a table, a pivot table report, pivot chart, only create connection. But I'm just going to say do it to a new worksheet, and it's also going to create a connection at the same time. So I'm going to click OK on that. And you can see it says getting data, and a connection is being made over here at the same time. You can see how many rows are being loaded, and it says 218,882 rows. And just by selecting on the mousing over the data, that is, you can get an idea for what the data is, region, country, and you can sort of scroll this way and you can scroll down on the data as well, and you've got some options here: editing it, load to duplicate, reference, merge, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this data source, and I'm going to call it Asia data. and I'm going to fix the headers here. So I'm going to click on the view menu and I'm going to choose freeze panes, and I guess I can just do freeze top row, which is the same thing. And if I end down, we're down to the bottom, 218,883, just like the data source says. Okay, the one element to do before we bring in the next piece of data, which will be Australia, is I'm going to first of all name this tab to Asia, like so. And what we can do as a quick shortcut now is I'm going to click on the data source, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to choose duplicate. And when I choose duplicate, it just takes us straight into Power Query Editor all over again. But this time I'm going to, what am I going to do? I'm going to change the filtered rows from Asia to Australia and click OK. And now we've got Australia and Oceania. I'm going to now choose Close and Load To, and this time New Worksheet again. Click OK. And we can see Asia Data 2 is building up its rows, and it looks like Asia Data 2, which in this instance is Australia and Oceania, will be 121,405 rows, which means it'll go down to row 406, 121,406. But I'm going to rename this data source to Australasia, or Australia. Sorry, you Aussies. Australia and Oceania for this instance, just to keep the data clean. Oceania. Good. So now we've got two data sources, and I'm just going to call this Australia. So we can hop between data sources by, if I click on Asia data, it takes me to the Asia data. If I click, and we can get a preview, and Australia, Australasia. So finally, let's summarize the data. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a summary, kind of like a pivot table, where we get region, we summarize total revenue, total cost, and total profit by region, country, and item type. Let's do that now. So again, I'm going to duplicate a data source by clicking on the connection or the query, right clicking, choosing duplicate. That will take us into the Power Query Editor again. And what we got to do first of all is remove the columns that we're not interested in. So I'm just going to shift click between sales channel and units sold, and then I'm going to click on remove columns. So I need to get rid of a couple more, in this instance unit price and unit cost. So that was me shift clicking again, pressing the shift key and click, and remove columns. So the next step is to choose group by. So in this instance I'm going to click on the group by button and a new dialog box will appear. And here we go. So I'm grouping by region, but what we need to do is click on the advanced area. So region is the first element that we're grouping by. I need to add a second grouping, and we're going to then group on country and add a third grouping, and I'm then going to group on item type. Now this is going to be quite a big data set, so it's not a small data set like I said initially. I've got confused for a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose the value, the numerical columns for the grouping. So first of all, I want to group, I'm going to call this, let's see, I'm going to call this costs, and I'm going to, the operation I'm going to do is summing, and I'm going to sum the total cost column. And then I'm going to add another aggregation, and what I want to do is do sum, and in this instance I'm going to sum the revenue column, and I'm just going to call this revenue. Next I'm going to add another aggregation, and we're going to get the profit in this instance. So we're going to do sum, and notice what's happening there. This particular column wouldn't become active until I clicked sum in this region, in this instance rather. So we're now doing profit, and I'm just going to call this profit. And I click OK, and it's going to then go and have a think for a little while. And here we go. So we've got again, well this time we can see it's brought the summary down to 325 rows, 324 rows. And again, looking at the applied steps, you can actually step back on these, so we can go back to the source, then click promote headers, then click change type, then click filtered rows, then click removed columns, and then click grouped rows. And that reminds me, that's what is actually wrong with this. So this is actually very useful, because what it highlights is a deficiency. So if or not so much a deficiency, something you have to watch for. So if I scroll all the way down, we've got 324 rows for Asia. So basically what I've actually summarized is countries within Asia and item types that, for example, are item types: baby food, beverages, clothes, cosmetics. I've just summarized these for Asia, and that's because I forgot that everything is a filtered step here. And so we had filtered rows, and these filtered rows were Asia. Let's see what happens. We've got, if I take out, so at grouped rows here, let's see what happens if I remove the filtered rows element. Will the query break, or will it continue? Coming right up. So we got 324 rows in Asia. I remove the filtered rows, and I'm guessing it's going to break. And it hasn't. Excellent, excellent. But now we're at 999 plus rows. But that's what you got to remember. Everything is a step. Each step builds on the next step. This can be edited, but and we can do it in VBA as well. But for now, let's just stick with this. So now let's sort the data. You do this by clicking on the down arrow element on the column header and just do sort ascending, if you want to sort ascending, that is. And it's going to think about it. And then I'm going to sort on country within region. And notice that a number will appear in the headers once this is sorted. This shows what the actual sort order is. Okay, so it's sorted. So you can now see, because this is a multi-column sort, we're first of all sorting on Asia, and you can see there's a region, and there's a 1 there. We next sorted on country, so a 2 appears there. Now I'm going to sort on item type, and a 3 will appear there. Okay, so now we send this data back to Excel again. Close and load to, and I'm going to do new worksheet again. And I'm going to, you can see the data is coming in. And while it's coming in, I'm going to rename this to region, country, item, summary. And I'm going to rename the data source the same. Region, country, item type, summary. So if you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe and or like this video, and I will have more videos coming on Power Query looking into different elements of it, including adjusting it in VBA. Thanks for watching.